Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with another video. So, this is probably the first video, well first of all, I hope everyone's doing well. This is the first video I've had a chance to do in a few days. It's been a weird day here for me. The weather's been odd. Elevator broke down for some time, so I wasn't able to do all the errands I was looking to do today. But overall, we're okay, which is always the most important part. RJ is currently snoozing on my bed, and I just wanted to just comment a bit on I guess you could say it's a rumor, or I guess some spoiler information about the character of Orko from Masters of the Universe and the Masters of the Universe Revelation cartoon. Now, I was just watching the Clownfish TV video about this, where Kevin Smith spoils the fact that Orko is going to be making a heroic sacrifice in episode 4. So I just wanted to sort of play the clip where he talks about that, and then sort of give my opinion on whether or not it's okay to kill I guess you could say, main character or a main supporting character in a work, right? Because people can get deeply attached to these type of characters and not always take their death, if they die, well, because we generally expect, the heroes of the story to survive. So let me play the clip so you can hear fully what Kevin says without my input, and then I'll sort of go over it and give my opinion and some examples of where a main character or a main supporting character's death actually did help the story. Because that's my biggest concern. It's less about whether or not a character should be killed, and more of, if the character is killed, will their death help advance the story or help advance another character's character arc, or are they simply being killed off just for the shock value of it all, right? So let me play this clip. This is on Daily Motion again. I got the idea for this from watching Clownfish's video on it. So here, this clip is going to be from about 2 minutes 20 seconds to about 4 minutes, so it's about 2 minutes and change in length, where Kevin Smith talks about how original fans felt about Orko, and then his idea to sort of redeem the character and then kill him off, apparently. Or at least, rather, I should say, have him make the heroic sacrifice in episode 4. So here's what he has to say. Come on. There we go. Play. What the? No. Play. Yeah, play.
Absolutely.
Play.
Listen, I didn't realize this until I was watching the show last night. It turns out I think I'm an Orko guy. I think he's my favorite character in the entire franchise.
That makes me so happy.
And he's so well done in this show. If you had to pick, I hate to make you pick your babies, do you have a favorite character in the entire He-Man Masters of the Universe franchise?
Orko is very special to me, our iteration of Orko, because I'll never forget the conversation that we had in the writer's room with me, Eric, and Dia, and Tim, and Mark. We were going through the show and going like, look, Orko, it's not even 50-50. It's like 75-25. 75% of people just didn't like the character and like, oh, he ruined the show for me and shit like that. So we were like, all right, let's change that. How do you make Orko the most beloved character? And so we introduced this kind of broken, sadder, wiser version of Orko, who still has this youthful voice and childlike enthusiasm for adventure. And like, he's got this moment where like, even if you hated Orko your whole life, when he has that moment where he's talking about like, please let me come along with you, I won't mess up this time. Like, he sounds like a 5-year-old who just wants to be involved and stuff. So we wanted to make the audience fall in love with Orko because we knew what we wanted to do with Orko at the end of episode 4. Have him be the hero, have him make a very heroic sacrifice. So it was kind of insidious, where we were like, Here's this character nobody likes. Let's make everybody love him, and then watch them get angry when the character they've always hated is taken from them. They're like, but I like that guy now. Like, so that meant the world to me to hear you say that.
Absolutely.
I love Orko, but I also, one of my favorite characters in this entire arc is what we do with the evil link.
Okay, so as you heard him say there, right, it seems to be that his idea is to redeem the character of Orko in the eyes of fans, just to kill him off, or at least have him make a sacrifice at the end of episode 4. Now, here's my thing. I cannot speak to my personal opinion on Orko because I hardly watched He-Man. It wasn't really airing when I started watching cartoons. Like, the first cartoon I remember ever seeing and really falling in love with was Thundercats. So I was more of a Thundercats, Biker Mice from Mars, X-Men type of girl. The only cartoon I can really recall seeing at that young age, around 4, 5, 6 years old, which for me would have been the late 80s going into the early 1990s, is maybe the Conan the Adventurer cartoon. So I'm speaking less as a fan of He-Man and more as a fan of storytelling. And some of the things Kevin said here give me pause. Now, I want to be clear. I can certainly understand from a fan's perspective, right, hearing that a character that at the very least you're used to in the show, right, whether or not you like him. Kevin claims in this that at the majority of fans of He-Man did not like Orko. I can't speak to that. I don't know how fans feel about Orko. I've never really been in the fandom for Masters of the Universe and He-Man and all that other stuff, so I have no idea whether or not he's telling the truth. I will admit I do lean more toward not believing or not taking everything Kevin says as fact because, one, he's been caught in a lot of, let's say, compromising positions, right? Claiming that he's a He-Man fan, and then people find videos from like a year or two ago where he says he wasn't a He-Man fan, and apparently he said that he started watching He-Man in '85, but it really aired in '83, right? So let's put it like this. There's been a lot of inconsistencies on the part of Kevin Smith here when it comes to whether or not he's a fan personally of the He-Man Masters of the Universe franchise. So I'm speaking more as someone who's interested in storytelling than necessarily someone who is a fan of the particular work or universe. Now, here's the thing. I'm not against, as I said earlier, I am not against killing a main character or even a beloved character or even the main character of the show, right? But the question is the death worth it? Will the death advance the story in some fashion? And that's the thing. That's the thing. Because nothing that Kevin says there says anything about how his death, if he dies, or rather his sacrifice, how Orko's sacrifice is going to actually further the story or further another character's story or character arc or growth. It seems to me, if I go by just what he said here, it seems to me that he's doing this for shock value, right? According to his own words, it seems to be that he wants to redeem the character of Orko in fans' eyes, right? Have fans love him and then kill him off, or rather have him make a sacrifice, just so the fans can have an emotional reaction, right? If he even says, like, hey, I hate that guy, but I kind of love him now. Why did you do that, right? And generally speaking, that's the type of thing I don't like, right? When a work does that, when they do something in particular, kill a character or have them make a sacrifice just to get a rise out of the audience. Now, I want to be clear. Any decent work needs to move the audience emotionally. That is understood and well known, right? A story that cannot move you in any way, that can't make you feel something, is not a story at all. But there is a difference between telling a story and then in the midst of that story evoking certain emotions because that's what's appropriate for the scene, right? Or for the story at that point. And then doing something just to get more or less a rise out of the fans, right? It's the best way I could describe it is this, and I know that I always default to pro wrestling, so forgive me for that, but it kind of reminds me of like the cheap pop or the cheap insult in pro wrestling, because what'll happen is that if a face character, if a good guy, wants to get the fans to cheer and they want to do it easily, they'll go for what's called a cheap pop. For example, they'll mention that they're in this wonderful city of wherever, right? And conversely, when someone's playing the heel, when they're playing the bad guy, one of the ways to get a cheap pop or the villainous version of it, which is cheap heat, is to just insult the city that you're in, right? It isn't really about drawing sincere feeling out. It's just about playing on people's emotions at that moment, right? Praise them when you want them to cheer for you, insult them when you want them to boo you, right? But it doesn't necessarily do anything for the wrestler's character or anything like that, right? Hence why it's called a cheap pop or cheap heat, right? Because it's just a simple way to get a rise out of people, and that's what this sounds like here to me. And again, I want to be clear: I haven't seen the show, haven't even watched the full trailer yet, so it could be that there is more to this. But given just so many problematic elements, I would say, that have come out regarding this show, Tila's design and her revamped personality, the fact that the show seems to be more the Tila show than the He-Man show, and other things, I'm leaning toward this being a disappointment toward for Masters of the Universe fans, and that's very sad because they deserve a good show, right? If you're gonna bring a franchise back, it should be to make fans both old and new happy. And at least from the channels I follow, I haven't seen too many people who are happy or even cautiously optimistic about whether this show will be good. Now, here's the thing: as I said before, there are deaths in a story that can actually be used in a way that will advance the story or advance a character's arc or their development forward. Two that I can think of, and there are many, but two that I can think of actually come from manga, right? And one would be the death of Master Genkai in Yu Yu Hakusho, and the death of Maze Hughes in Full Metal Alchemist. And believe me, both of those series have enough deaths that you could mention, and there's no shortage of deaths in the history of comics, right? That sort of set a character on their path. For example, right, the parents of characters in a lot of comic books tend to be dead as part of their origin story, right? But I want to focus in particular on these two because first of all, Kevin says that they're trying to redeem the character of Orko in about 3 or 4 episodes, right? He says that fans didn't like him, and so he wants to make fans love him before they take Orko away by making him have a heroic sacrifice in episode 4. I don't know how many episodes this is going to have, but episode 4 I think is pretty early for that type of thing, like a character, a major or main character dying in story. Now again, maybe he really doesn't die. Maybe the sacrifice is in a different sense, right? Maybe he gets captured, maybe he disappears, who knows? But Kevin is referring to it as a heroic sacrifice, and most people understand that to mean that a character is going to die. But for all we know, maybe Orko's just giving up all his magic or whatever it is, right? But it seems to be that Orko's on this sort of redemption quest, right? Even Kevin says, that Orko has this very timid voice, but that he's he's old or he's wise or he's a bit heartbroken and that he's asking for like one more chance, right? take me with you. Uh, I won't screw up this time, right? So it definitely seems to be a. How do I put it? The way he describes it, it's leaning toward the redemption equals death trope, but I'm not sure if the way it's being done is going to be effective. If that makes any sense. Now, let me talk about the two deaths that I'm comparing this to. Master Genkai's death in Yu Yu Hakusho did more than just move fans, right? Who were fans of the character or who were just, used to her. For those who haven't read Yu Yu Hakusho, Master Genkai is Yusuke's martial arts and spirit energy teacher, mentor, sensei, right? And she becomes, in a sense, Yusuke's grandmother figure, and probably the only one in the series who can really get through to Yusuke, which is not easy because Yusuke is very hard-headed, right? So in season 2, right, there's about, I would say about in the middle of season 2, we start getting sort of a sub-arc between Genkai and the villain of the story, who is Toguro. And we find out that Genkai and Toguro were part of the same martial arts team. They're both former winners of this competition they're in called the Dark Tournament, and they were lovers once. And then let's just say that things went bad, right? And Genkai knows that Yusuke has to be her successor, and that he has to have the strength to defeat Toguro, because she feels responsible in a way for what Toguro became. And she knows that at her old advanced age, she can't stop him because Toguro became a demon and, she's decided to stay human. Long story here. But basically, she knows that Yusuke is her greatest legacy and that she has to do all she can to make him strong enough to defeat Toguro. And part of that is her own death. So what happens is that she literally gives Yusuke energy to absorb from her, a task that nearly kills him. But again, story for another day. But towards the end of season 2, Genkai is indeed killed by Toguro. And Yusuke and the rest of the team, but especially Yusuke, have to cope with that loss, right? And the ending, I guess you could say, sub arc or sub story arc about that is very touching because Genkai is the first person Yusuke cannot save, right? He can't rescue her from death. See, that's the thing, right? He can't do it. And it's really about him learning how to cope with a loss that he cannot reverse. Because every time, ever since he got his spirit powers in the beginning of season 1, he's been able to save people, right? He saves Kurama, he saves little kids, he's able to save Earth when he defeats the leader of the Saint Beast, right? But this is the first time in the series where someone he loves and who was close to him cannot be saved, right? He has all this strength, and even laments that he has all this strength, but he cannot protect her. And so that helps advance his growth as a character, right? And her death also brings about the closure of her own arc with Toguro, right? At least up until when she's resurrected at the end, which is something that I always personally disagreed with. But up until that point, her death did more than just, get fans upset. Her death actually contributed to the story and moved it forward. It wrapped up her own arc. It helped with Yusuke's development as a character and helped him move his own arc with Toguro forward. Because there's another arc going on there because Yusuke and Toguro are very similar, right? And Yusuke learns through Genkai's lessons that Toguro is the very thing he could become if he lives in fear, right? Because Toguro became a demon because he lost everyone he ever cared about, and he basically had a I will never be hurt again, I will never lose again moment, right? and he decided to trade his humanity for power. Yusuke is in a position at that time to do something very similar. So her death also teaches him that lesson. What can happen to you if you trade your humanity for power just because you are scared of losing people or scared of pain, right? So again, it contributes in many ways to the story. And that's why it works. It's not just cheap heat. It's not just done to make the fans angry. It makes the fans think. And it contributes in many various ways to the story being told at that time. That is a good death. That's a good way to kill a character and have them contribute to the story. Let's move on to Hughes from FMA, right? If you've ever read that or seen that, you know what happens, right? Now, Hughes' death, its main purpose is to give Roy one reason to. It gives him an impetus, right? It gives him reason to pursue his killer, right? It gives Roy motivation, most certainly, as if he didn't have enough of it. But it also contributes to the story because of the fact that we see how the Elrics deal with it, right? And we see how everybody who loved Hughes is impacted by his passing. But of course, where it really pays off is toward the end of the story when Roy finally finds out that it was Envy the homunculus who killed Hughes, and we see what Roy's simmering rage has done to him, right? How it causes him to nearly sacrifice his own life, right? To kill Envy, right? How it's driving him toward madness to the point where he will turn against his own allies to get his vengeance. And of course, the most interesting thing is that when Riza steps in and more or less makes Roy choose between her own life or his rage against Envy. And fortunately, Roy chooses Riza. Right, so that's how Hughes' death uh, contributed. Right, maybe not as um, maybe not in such a multifaceted way as Genkai's death did, but it did contribute to Roy's growth as a character and giving him this flaw in his rage, right? Because he is the flame alchemist, he is fire, right? So we see the fires of revenge, right? Rage and how closely, how close Roy gets to losing his humanity, how close he gets to becoming the very type of monster that killed his best friend, right? That helped Roy's growth as a character, even if it did take the bulk of the story to finally get there, right? Now, again, to be fair, this isn't even out yet. Episode 4 isn't out yet. But one thing, first of all, I think if you're going to be doing a redemption arc, you need more than 4 episodes. You need at least like 1 season. So 4 episodes seems pretty damn fast. But 2, you need to build to this type of thing. You need to build to it. You need to tell a story here. I guess is the best thing and the best way that I can put it. You need to tell a story, right? Even if the story ends in the character's death, you need to tell a story with this type of thing. You can't just go killing them for the sake of killing them just to make the fans feel. Because in the end, the fans will feel angry toward you for killing a main character or even a beloved character, but not doing anything with it. And again, the most telling thing to me is that, again, Kevin says that they're going to build him up just to take him away. He doesn't say anything about whether or not Orko's death will actually be in service to the story in any way. So I guess that's just my biggest thing, is that for the sake of He-Man fans, I do hope that if this happens, if this plays out and Orko is killed, that it's more than just cheap heat. But sadly, I think it's going to be just that, if that's what happens. Cheap heat. So to those who are fans of He-Man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are. Bye.